We're live, pal, back with Andrew Zarian, myself, Double G. We're going to talk about some wrestling here, like usual, but I wanted to mention this is a little bit of a tease for next week. Now, contracts haven't been signed yet, fees have been negotiated, but I think we're going to get Big Dave Meltzer on next week to do a super chat Q&A. Andrew, if you had the
Yeah.
opportunity to ask Big Dave a question, and you cannot ask if there was more than one Ultimate Warrior, which question would you ask him?
Crap. I was going to ask him that one. First of all, the reason why the contract's not signed is that we are having a big issue with Dave because we put in the contract that he has to be in a tank top, showing the guns. Like one of those old school, like the spaghetti strap Gold's Gym ones, like one of those.
He's got him. I've seen him.
You've seen him. Oh, I'm so jealous. You know what? I'm gonna think about it. There has to be a question. You know what? I got one, but it's such like a marky answer, right?
Well, what
is
it about?
You know what? You know what it would be? I want to know if it would have been possible. Obviously, if Owen had not passed away, would it have been possible for Brett to return to WWE after WCW went?
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's what I want to ask him.
It's so funny when I think back of we always talk about that old IATA show. Now, were you? I can't remember. Were you listening to those IATA shows at that time? Because you're pretty young at that point.
Yeah, no, dude. I used to record the IATA shows on my Iowa boombox. I had my friend's father program a timer to launch Real Player, and it would go to automatic. Like he programmed the mouse to click it and everything, and I had to leave the mouse in a certain spot that I had on my desktop. Like I had like a little X, and I would have to start this program before I left to school, and it would like go and start recording. So I would miss about, I would say 15 minutes of the show before I got home. And then I would I would listen to the rest, and then I would listen to the first 15 minutes. So I was listening to the IATA shows from 99 on.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sure, like I've even saw old questions that I sent into the print observer. Like I would see my name in there a few different times. I'm almost sure I got questions on there as well on the show. Probably stuff involving like Jerry Lawler and Andy Kaufman and what was real and what wasn't. Yeah. He's like, yeah, the whole thing is a work, man. I'm like, oh my God.
What? I got a bunch of questions, dude, for him. Like, I want to know what was the biggest surprise that he's ever experienced. Like something that he was like shocked about in wrestling, right? Obviously, we know the big ones. Chris Benoit would be number one for me, right? Like that would be the number one shocker of all time. But I'm sure there's plenty that he's experienced in his career covering this thing, because he's covered every major event to ever happen. I don't think anybody could say the same. I mean, there's a small group of people.
Yeah, there's a grisly aspect to wrestling. And, you know, when the Vince McMahon, Janelle Grant stuff had come out, and you know how just sick to your stomach you were getting reading that stuff.
Yeah.
I thought about Dave, because to be a reporter, you can't have a sensitive stomach to stuff like that because you have to cover it, right?
Yeah.
And you go back to the Chris Benoit thing. If you want to go back and read like grisly reporting, like that Chris Benoit stuff in the 2007 Observers, oh my God, I was like, I would have to like turn the lights on in my apartment back then to read, because I was like, this is like scaring the hell out of me. But yeah, like all of those stories. Like, I mean, that's why Dark Side of the Ring exists, is because you have all of these grisly stories. So, you know, we'll get Dave on next week, and if you want to send in a super chat, you'll be able to ask him whatever he wants. I think we'll probably do it similarly to how we did Brian and Vinny. The first half an hour of the show will be you and I, and then we'll save the last half an hour and maybe go a little bit longer depending on how many questions we get for Dave. He was going to do it today, but I'm actually glad he had to postpone, because then it gives us the opportunity to promote it for next week. So everybody,
you brought up super chats. We got one already for today.
Oh my God, let's go.
So Kim in our YouTube chat says, I was at SmackDown ringside in Memphis. So much fun. Never expected The Rock to get so much love.
Yes.
Cody there for the dark match. Got photo with him. So dang over. Yeah, I mean, this is the hot story, right? This is a very unique hot story.
And it is exactly what we are going to talk about in our first segment here. So thank you, Kim. I'm what a SmackDown to go to. Holy cow. Like, what did it that I can't imagine what the reaction sounded like in the building because it sounded loud as hell through my television. And I think I mentioned this to you. I don't generally watch the wrestling shows live. I'll watch Dynamite. At least I try and watch Dynamite within 20 minutes of live. But sometimes, it's dinner time for the family. I'm not always watching the full show. But these Rock segments, when this chat about SmackDown starts in the Discord, people will at me and go, "Up, Rock's coming out," and then I go and log in on the Fox app on my TV because I don't get SmackDown live here. I get the West Coast feed, but if I go through the Fox app, I can actually watch the East Coast feed. And so,
Yeah.
just in the chat, buddy Joe Gilbert was like, "Hey, Rock's leading off the show," so I immediately popped the app open, and I got to see the beginning of the Rock concert. And I think most people would have figured that he was going to do this kind of segment because he's done it over the years. The famous one is the one in Sacramento before the Austin match where the Lakers beat the Kings in May. Like, we're going all the way back, that line. But
Yeah.
this time he did it a little bit differently because he didn't have an actual guitar. He had musicians with a sort of a
Playing.
Memphis theme playing while he was singing. I thought that was amazing. Like, the production of that entire segment was like A plus. Like, I was like, did we go back to the Grammys? Like, the Grammys was only about a month ago. Like, the same artists from the Grammys are out here live on a wrestling television show. What did you think of like the spectacle of the whole thing? Because it just made, to me, it made him seem like the biggest star wrestling has ever seen. He was just bigger than life.
Yeah, yeah, I think when he comes in there and you see the difference in how he presents himself and how the audience interacts with him, it's actually unbelievable to see when you talk about a star, right? Like top tier, top of the line star. I mean, that is who you think of is Dwayne. There's not too many people that have ever been able to capture the audience to that level ever. So, you know, I'm not going to name names, right? But there are plenty of people in both companies that are at the top tier in the company that they're in, either it's AEW or WWE, that will never be able to garner that kind of reaction. And it says
No.
something. And it says something tremendous. And you know what? There's plenty of people that have been WWE champion that will never be on the level of The Rock. And when we talk about top level stars, that is what we talk about. And really, that has not been created in many, many years. Now, it could be that, Dwayne has become such a special attraction that we react that way because of all the years that he's put in. But listen, I mean, I'm just throwing a name out there, and this is no shade at anybody. But do you think in 5 to 10 years, Seth Rollins will get that kind of reaction if he returns?
Well, I think the comparable one is Cena of today, right? Because remember late last year, Cena came back because of the strike, and he was actually a really big ticket mover. Like, people were gobbling up tickets of seeing, John Cena maybe one more time, maybe one last time. Now, my relationship with John Cena is not the same as my relationship. WrestleMania 19, you remember that was Hogan versus McMahon, who was the reason for WrestleMania. They had that angle. So Hogan was on the Go Home show. I think it was a SmackDown show. And that was the first time I ever saw him live was
Wow.
on that show. And I was like, wow, this is kind of crazy. Like, this is the first time I've ever really seen him on a live show. So fast forward to WrestleMania 31. So it was the I think it was a house show. He and Flair were both on a house show in San Jose, and this is when they were going to put the on sale ticket code. If you go to this house show, you get the on sale ticket code to purchase your WrestleMania tickets or whatever. And so I went to that show. So that was 2015. And so it's a different Hogan, right? It's 13 years later.
Yeah.
And I feel like the bloom was pretty much off the rose that time. And the reason is because I was like thinking like, he is at a house show, not in front of the TV crowd. Does that mean his star has dimmed? I don't know if it had or not, but that was just sort of my
when it dimmed, really? I think it dimmed when people realized that he's not going to wrestle again. And the same thing happened with Flair, really, too.
He still keeps teasing it, though.
He will forever tease it. He's teasing it at 70 years old. One more match, brother. The guy is walking with a cane. I mean, it's terrible to see. Listen, I know. Hogan said some terrible stuff. He's politicked for himself his whole career. But as a kid, and I'm saying as a performer, there was nothing bigger than the first time I saw Hulk Hogan wrestle. That was the moment for me. I mean, he was a mega star. And you know what? That roster was packed at that time with people that we really love now. Perfect was there. Bret Hart was, you had all these top names. There's nobody that was able to come close. You know who did? Warrior for a while.
Yes.
That reaction that he was getting. I mean, I saw Warrior wrestle too. I think it really has to do with, like, one thing I never subscribed to was the fact that Hogan and Flair, right? The story was that match didn't happen because it did terrible at the house shows.
Well, it did good on the first. It did really good on the first wave, but then they went back to it, and when they went back to it, it didn't really draw.
Is that what it was? Because when I was in that building at the Garden, when they came out, it was like December. It was like that December show. I knew I witnessed something very special, and I'm a kid.
Yeah,
7 years old, 8 years old, whatever I was. I knew I saw something extremely special that these two guys were able to wrestle. I don't know if it was like my cousin told me or like my friend's older brother told me about it, but like it got me hyped for it. And when it didn't happen, it was so disappointing. And then the story now is that, it didn't do well. Are you kidding me? You have the biggest possible match that you could possibly have. The two world champions, your competitor's world champion, that's obviously going to lose to your guy. There's no way Flair's beating Hogan.
Yeah.
And he don't do it? Crazy.
That whole thing, I'm actually going to do a podcast in the next couple of weeks where me and my buddy Big D, we kind of break down what are the biggest WrestleMania matches that didn't happen. And, people will say, oh, Sting and The Undertaker, right? Like that was kind of a tease. People were making like fake graphics of that match. But Hogan and Flair is one of them. And in addition to the houses going down the second time around the loop, the other thing was that in order to get Sid Vicious from WCW to WWF, Vince had to promise him he was going to be main eventing against Hogan at WrestleMania. Now, some may say, Vince has lied to talent before. He couldn't just lie again. So I agree with that part. The other part of it, though, now here's what's interesting. So if you do Hogan and Flair, then if you remember what was happening around that time, it was the steroid thing, and Hogan was going away. Remember, after the Vicious match, he goes away because his name is Mud, and they need to kind of distance themselves from him because of all the steroid stuff. So if you do Hogan and Flair, and Hogan re-wins the title, then he's going away. So that's another wrinkle that I don't think people think about as far as that match is concerned.
That steroid stuff always baffles me. It always baffles me. It's like, oh my God, what a shocker. Cheech Marin does pot. That's how I always saw it. Like, even as a kid, I was like, why is this such a big deal? Why is this steroid allegation such a big deal? These aren't baseball athletes. These aren't basketball players. They're obviously not getting Olympic tested for anything. I'm like, of course they're on steroids. Like, maybe that's me because I came from the bodybuilding family and I was constantly told how steroids were a thing.
Yeah.
In my family, it was like, and like, it was never. I have a very different opinion of steroids. I don't even want to get into it because it'll dive this whole show. I I am not as I don't have a guttural reaction to people being on steroids, especially bodybuilders and professional wrestlers. That's
What
your
about
discussion. I
actors? All these
listen,
actors are putting on
all of them.
giant muscle for roles. How does
And
that
guess what?
happen?
Everybody's still on something now.
Yeah.
Everybody is on something. I mean, listen, I'm not saying everybody 100%, but it is extremely difficult. You have to be a superhero in order to maintain a physique like these guys do. And I don't want to name names, but obviously you could see and even guys that don't, that they are on some sort of either human growth hormone, a peptide, a testosterone, something. There's no, I mean, how come nobody's talking about Dwayne? Why is that not a big deal? You think if Dwayne came out and said, I take steroids, I'm on, everybody's going to say, yeah, of course you do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there
I mean,
there is an interesting relationship with steroids and the media. Okay, so now I'm one day, and this may never happen because there's always stuff going on in wrestling. One day we will have an open and honest conversation about steroids, just
yeah,
in
let's do it.
general,
Yeah.
because it's a fascinating topic. But here's the thing: in 1992, now I was probably a little too young to know about all of these things, but because I followed wrestling and because I followed sports as closely as I did, I knew about them because as a young person in 1989, the NFL started their very first steroid testing, and it wasn't because they thought it was great. It was because of a reaction to, people getting ill and having heart issues, and they're like, "Oh, we got to look into this."
Yeah.
So one of in 1989, Dave wrote a piece in the Observer, and he's like, well, one of the reasons why WWE doesn't want athletic commissions to oversee wrestling is because then the WWE won't have to pay a tax to have them there. They won't have to pay part of their gate to have these athletic commissions. WWE just didn't want. They was like, oh, we'll bring in our own doctors and that whole thing.
Yeah.
But a smaller reason that Dave mentioned is because if they actually decided that they were going to steroid test the wrestlers, it would upend WWE's entire structure because so many of their guys were on steroids. So now you fast forward to 1992, and why is this a big deal? Well, it's a big deal mostly because of lies, mostly because of people not being honest about it. And by lying about it, they almost made it more evil than it was in professional wrestling. Now, in athletics, sure, you're playing football. It's pretty dangerous, right? You're hitting people. In hockey, like you're body checking people. The stronger you are, it could be a little bit more dangerous. But the reason why I think there was so much fear of it, at least in wrestling and bodybuilding, was because of what was starting to happen in the late 90s, the early 2000s. All these dudes were like 40 years old and dropping dead. Now, a lot of them were drug overdoses, right? But a lot of them
are also
heart
large
related.
hearts. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was like
Eddie Guerrero, one example.
There was a mix of the lifestyle in which steroids was included, and what we saw was everybody's worst fear when it came to the steroids. So, now here we are, from the Eddie Guerrero timeframe, which was I think 2006 to today. That was 18 years ago. What has changed? Well, the guys aren't as jacked up as they were even then. But my hope, and I need to ask Dave this question. I've actually had this conversation with him in person, but on the air, I think it'd be fascinating. My hope is that the drugs are just better, right? That's
exactly what it
more
is.
advanced, and they're not as harmful. And the wrestlers are smart enough to know the difference between what is the right amount. I don't know if people are actually microdosing testosterone, but what is the right amount versus what is not. What is a doctor not telling these guys, and why are these guys shooting up like way more than their body can use, like that kind of thing. So there's that conversation that we could also have about sort of why you're kind of okay with it because of your experiences, so much so to that I hear they call you TRT Zarian, like in public.
I'm not advocating anybody should do anything like this, but there is a huge difference between 1980s anabolic steroids and
Yes.
what people determine as, human growth hormone or TRT today. Very different things. Very, very different. It's safer. Are there side effects? I'm sure. Listen, I've been on TRT for a year. In high school, I did steroids too. I was an athlete. And I have a very mixed opinion of this. I don't advocate anybody do anything like this. If this is something that you're looking to do, you got to do it safely. Um, I understand that athletes need a competitive edge. I'm going to tell you something. A friend of mine, he was a baseball player. Okay, he's retired now. He was a decent baseball player, professional. He played in the majors, and he pretty much told me something very interesting. He goes, "If every player that is achieving something from the time that he went in," he said almost everybody was on something. And the way that they would do it, and even if they weren't, they had the availability to do it because in college, they were able to get a prescription for testosterone. They would go and they complain about low energy and no sex life, and they're tired and they can't focus. And all of a sudden, these 21-year-old kids are getting a prescription for testosterone, and they don't use it. They wait. They wait until they're in their mid to late 20s or even 30s, and now they start using it, and guess what? Their performance shoots up because the baseline test, they're still leveled. They never dropped off. So what's the problem here? If you're baselining at 800 or 900 your entire life, and as an athlete, they're not going to pop you for anything, and you could have another extra 5 to 6 years of your career. I'm throwing a number. It is all fascinating to me, and I don't think that is cheating. If you are looking to extend it from injuries, or if you're 40 years old, you're a star player for the New York Yankees. I'm not going to name names. Alex Rodriguez.
Biogenesis.
I don't know. I know. Well, he got popped hard, but if you are looking to I don't see the harm in this in that level.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is and I'm sure people have a great argument to this, and we could have a nice long discussion. I'm throwing a lot of generalities, and people could pick it. There is obvious cheating that happens, but there's also extending your career. Is that considered cheating? If you're 42 years old and you still want to continue playing ball, and you get HGH or you get testosterone replacement therapy to either help you maintain the muscle, maintain your ability to play at the level that you were playing, or to recover from an injury, is that cheating?
Well, I mean, this is a fascinating discussion, and I think the people that we should have this discussion with, Dave Meltzer, who has said basically his entire life that he has not taken anything. I mean, the man has great genetics. And also Lance Storm. Lance Storm also has never taken anything. And, I'm sure they would have better answers for you as to why, because they were both in, Dave was less competitive, but he was also in that culture and environment. He's working out at Gold's Gym in Campbell, California, where all the bodybuilders are working out at. And then Lance being an active pro wrestler. Can you imagine what Lance would have been like on steroids? He would have been like, he would have been like Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner, who could throw an insane drop kick. That's how his genetics are. So, yeah, how did we actually get into this? For some reason,
I don't know. But you know what? Now I'm picturing Big Pop Lance's face on Scott Steiner's body, like a 2000 Scott Steiner body. Somebody Photoshop that, please.
Okay, let's go back to what we were talking about, which was Rock and Cody and the star aspect of it all. And here's my question to you. The Rock, as the bad guy in this story, the heel, the villain, he was sure not treated like the villain. And I was having a discussion with my buddy Paul Fontaine about this. The Rock was being mean, but he was being an ass-kicking mean rather than a cowardly mean.
During the TV promo or the
TV
YouTube
promo.
video?
Both of them. Because he kept talking about Mama Rhodes and how he was going to beat Cody up with the belt, and he's going to beat him bloody, and then he's going to hand the belt to Mama Rhodes. And so that is kind of a heel mannerism, but at the same time, he's the ass kickingest guy. And I was having this conversation. I was saying, you know, at one point, Stone Cold Steve Austin pointed a fake gun at Vince McMahon and pulled the trigger, and Vince peed his pants. That was really mean too. But Austin was an ass kicking person, and that's what made him a babyface, not him doing good deeds. So, you know, I think this idea of what makes a babyface and what makes a heel is a little bit gray anyways. But I watch Rock on that thing and I was like, yeah, okay, he's daring Mama Rhodes, but at the same time, he's basically saying, I'm going to beat Cody Rhodes' ass. So that, to me, that makes him a babyface. But then Cody has to answer that promo. And so Cody had to dial it up last night on Raw. And if I compare the two promos, one was kind of like an all-time great performance, and the other one was a good promo that was a little bit try-hardy. And you know what the funniest thing is? And this is kind of tangentially related, but I watch LA Knight on SmackDown, and I'm like, we have the real thing. Like, okay, The Rock was just on the show.
I have a whole different opinion. I have a whole different opinion than you on this.
Okay,
and
go ahead.
I really like those LA Knight promos, and I understand there is obviously influence from The Rock and Steve Austin there.
Yeah.
But also it's a pro wrestling promo, and we just don't see that too often. That cadence has been delivered by everybody.
Yep.
You know, that cadence is something that has happened. Sorry, my phone is buzzing and I can't turn this off. Here we go. That entire thing has been 1987, late 70s to The Rock current day. That is a wrestling promo. So I don't compare it that way. And you know what? Taking influence from somebody that has achieved it, and you're cutting that style of promo, I really love that style of pro wrestling promo. I don't like the real conversation. I love it. I love a little bit of the cartoonishness
the hype
in a promo.
The hype, yeah.
I love the hype. I could still appreciate every other thing. I mean, there's plenty of people that cut tremendous promos that don't do that, right? Roman Reigns is one. Cody is one. Just it's evolved. It's changed. So
okay, so here's my question.
Yeah.
Did The Rock overshadow Cody Rhodes, in your opinion, based off of what they've done in the last couple weeks?
I think The Rock's overshadowing everybody, the entire company. I don't think it's a Cody problem, and I think Cody yesterday. I thought he delivered yesterday.
He had fire.
He had fire. I don't like the crying promos from Cody. You know, like, I'm not a fan of those, but I understand he's trying to tell a story. So
yeah.
I don't have to love every promo that he cuts. I just have to like it, and it has to continue the story. I
have to believe it.
Really fired. I have to believe it. And I do believe it when he talks.
Yeah.
But you know, listen, The Rock is going to overshadow every single person in that company, including his cousin. Because you know what? Nobody is talking about Roman. Nobody. Everybody's talking about Dwayne and Cody.
Okay. I have a theory about Roman.
Yeah, give me.
Roman's last couple of years has been all about work smarter, not harder, right? Roman is about to lose this belt. And yet, The Rock is doing all of the work to make the match. And Roman is chilling. He's hanging. He wasn't even on SmackDown, from what I remember. He's just, like, can you imagine the idea that the main heel in the main event of WrestleMania just, we don't need him. We got The Rock. Let Roman hang out with his family and chill at home. And so this almost fits the character that Roman is just like, oh, yeah, like, I don't have to work today. Of course I don't have to work today. You think I got to hype up this WrestleMania? I got other people to do that for me. That kind of makes him the head of the table in a weird way. But yeah, you know, Rock is overshadowing everybody. Seth is trying. I would say the best person doing their character work for this WrestleMania after The Rock, it's not Cody. It's not Seth.
You want to do it on 3? You want to say it on 3? Because I think we're thinking the same person. It'd be funny if we're not, okay? In 3, 2, 1.
Drew. Yeah.
There you go.
Absolutely. He's the best.
The
Okay, so
best.
I'm gonna tell a little behind the scenes kind of secret here, but my buddies from the Ringer, they were recording their show. David Shoemaker, the show that he's on. I think they had Drew on yesterday, and my buddy sent me like a little bit of a screenshot of the Zoom of it. And do you know what Drew McIntyre signed into Zoom as?
What?
CM Punk.
What? That's great. I mean, that's so good. That's so good.
He's the
Yeah.
savior of WrestleMania. I think he's been
Yeah.
doing, and you know why? So Seth Seth's character is very over the top, right? It's very boisterous. It's over the top. He's leaning into being a wrestling junkie. He's needs the spotlight. The Rock is over the top in his own way. He's just using his natural charisma and his understanding of how to act and timing and everything. And Cody is just being like the realist version of the Cody Rhodes character. Whereas Drew's doing something different altogether. And I think that's what makes him stand out. Like, I know Drew and Seth is going to be overshadowed. It is on night 2. It's not even going to be the main event of night 2. It's going to be in the middle of the show or maybe even the opening match or whatever. But I I may not be rooting for someone to win more than I am rooting for Drew McIntyre to win this match at WrestleMania.
Yeah, I want to see him with that title. And you know what? You don't really get too many second chances in pro wrestling. Okay? You don't get third chances.
Yeah.
This guy was there ever. You barely get third chance. This guy was there. He left. He came back better than ever. And he, in a very short period of time, from the time that they decided to push him to the time that he won that title, he got extremely, extremely over with the audience. And we talk about it all the time. Unfortunately, he got effed. Pandemic happened. He wasn't able to have that moment beating Brock Lesnar, being the Kingslayer. And, you know, he suffered from that. And now, out of nowhere, he's got that stock rising again. Mm-hmm. And they, you know, he's a giant of a man. Handsome, giant man with a great body. I'm not saying that because sometimes I look like him. If you look at me, when I had my hair long and put in a ponytail, you look quickly. You're like, okay, I can kind of see it with the beard. It's weird. I get Andrade sometimes, and I get Drew sometimes.
You're like a mix
if I went tanning.
Yeah, you're like the greatest mix of both of them.
Listen, I've been going to Beach Bum a little bit, so I'm a little bit darker today. When I'm pale, I get the Drew. I think it's amazing how he transformed his character with a slight adjustment. He's not doing anything totally different. He's just speaking differently. He's not fired up. He's like a realist, and that works. That's the total opposite end, right? I spoke about how much I love the LA Knight style of promo, but this is also unbelievable. I want him to beat Seth, and I want him and Punk to be in the match. We weren't talking about him and Punk until he got hurt.
Yeah. You know, the thing about Drew, I mean, you would have to ask him, and I haven't heard the Ringer interview yet, but I wonder if you gave him some truth serum, if he saw the CM Punk tell me when I'm telling lies character and was like, oh, I can actually do a version of that in WWE, because all he's doing is telling the truth from his perspective, and the fans look at it and go, oh yeah, I could totally see what he's saying. Like, that he's actually telling the truth here in this ironic way. But I do wonder if that CM Punk character was a little bit of an inspiration. Okay, so
well, you know what's an inspiration? A guy that you were told to dislike coming back, and now you're thinking, wow, well, I could take this as a great opportunity and have a dream match that nobody thought could possibly happen. You know, that motivates you.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It might have motivated Drew to kind of tweak it and to be in the position he's in now, because I'm very interested to see him win the title. And if he hadn't tweaked that character, if Punk had not gotten hurt, I probably would not have so much interest in a Drew McIntyre match at WrestleMania.
Okay. So as we get, I think what are we like 2.5 weeks away from WrestleMania now? Is that what it is?
We're two and
Something like
is
that.
it? Man, it's here.
It's pretty close. So night one, we have the match that you were not really interested in originally, which was The Rock and Roman against Cody and Seth. And then night two has the two big title matches. Um, what like if you were to compare your interest for this year's WrestleMania on a 1 to 10 scale, and maybe 10 is like WrestleMania 17. Like I don't remember being more excited for a WrestleMania than
Then
17, at
17.
least as an adult.
Yeah.
Maybe probably WrestleMania 3 for when I was a kid, but WrestleMania 17 as an adult, like that was like pretty big stuff.
As
Other
a
than
kid,
ones that I was going
14.
to.
Uh,
Okay, that's a good one.
14. I was very excited for because I wanted to see Austin win the title, and Shawn was one of my favorites. So obviously, I want to see that match. And it was a bad match. It wasn't great, and it wasn't it wasn't the best WrestleMania, but I was very excited for it. But also, 18. I was so psyched for 17, probably the best, one of the
Yeah.
best WrestleManias ever. Psyched for that. Uh, I very much liked 18 though. That was a big deal for me.
So where would if 17 and 18 were like a 10 on the scale of Andrew Zarian's interest, where would you
Yeah.
put 40?
I don't know, maybe like a 7,
Interesting. Okay.
maybe 6.5, maybe six and a
Be-
half, maybe 7.
because from what I'm gauging to the general audience, I can't I don't know this for a fact, obviously, but it feels like to a non-wrestling audience, this is like the biggest WrestleMania in a long time.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, you have some huge matches there, right? Like
Yep.
you got The Rock back. That tag match is going to be hot. The main event of night 2 is going to be hot. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. It just, I think maybe I'm a little bit jaded now because we talk about it so much and we watch
Sure.
it so much. So my
That
perspective,
makes sense.
I don't want to push my perspective of excitement on it. I will tell you, for every Royal Rumble, it's always a 10 for me going into it because that is my favorite thing to watch.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It could just be where my head's at, but I've never been a fan of the 2-night thing. So that automatically drops everything down a notch because you're not giving me the best possible card you can deliver because you're changing it.
Yeah, and I don't think we're going back, because if you can sell the house out twice instead of just once, why wouldn't you,
Yeah.
right? I would, you know what I would prefer? I would prefer night one of WrestleMania actually being a 3-hour SmackDown. And then night two is like the Sunday pay-per-view. And then like WrestleMania Aftermath is like is Raw. I would prefer it that
Yeah.
way because, like you, I don't want to watch 2 4-hour shows back to back on Saturday and Sunday. But that is kind of the deal. All right, let's talk a little bit about the big business show that just happened. I'm very interested about what you thought about the Mercedes Moné interview segment.
You know, it was interesting for sure. Obviously there's nerves, right? And I I think that plays a part in it too. I thought it was fine. I thought the crowd loved it. They were into her. She came back at the end. That was great too. Um, it was fine. It was what I thought it would be. I don't think this model works though.
Yeah.
They really tried the CM Punk model.
Yep.
And it's easy to say in hindsight that this wasn't, CM Punk is not the same. And not talking about star power, just talking about the fact that CM Punk had left the way he did WWE, had all that negativity, left the business, did not want to wrestle anymore. There were attempts to bring him back. Nobody, he didn't want to come back. And we finally got him to come back to this hot alternative. It's not the same. 7 years have not gone by for Mercedes to return.
Yes.
And listen, and I'm not, again, I never criticized the talent, but Mercedes Moné is not CM Punk. It's not the same. I would have rather, if they had announced it, it would have made more sense to me. Because, and the argument is everybody knew, right? Everybody knew. Well, did they? because AEW fans for sure knew, because that's their core audience. They had the 800,000 there. They had 1 million at that segment. But how about, again, how about the 13-year-olds that only watch WWE? Did they know? Not everybody lives on Twitter. Not
Yeah, I don't
everybody's
know.
living on Instagram. Do they know? Were they told Mercedes Moné, formerly known as Sasha Banks, is now debuting tonight? What would that have done to the number? I don't know what that number would have been. I don't know what that demo for her is. Whether or not it would have helped or not, it wouldn't have hurted. That's for sure. Hurt. That's for sure. It wouldn't have hurt.
No,
Could
I
you have
agree
put
with
in
you.
another 500 to 1,000 people in that building? Possibly. Could that number have changed for the viewership? Quite possibly. I would imagine, yes, it would have. I don't know if it was 1,000 people or 5,000 people. I don't know what that number would have been. I also think the other option could have been, hey, we don't have to do this Here She Comes. She could pop in a match, come through the crowd, do something, and get that crowd going.
I will say, for a show called Big Business, the thing I disagreed with most on the show was the future business or lack thereof that they created from that moment. Because I love the presentation. I think the presentation was a 10 out of 10. She seemed like a giant star. People cheered for her. They were there to, somewhat to see her. And then the promo happened. And then it was like a 6.5 to me because,
Yeah.
not that, we need the bullet points and all that stuff. And maybe Tony just, maybe Mercedes said, hey, I just want to explain why I love this and why I'm back. And we'll worry about everything else later. But to me, you're going to have so many eyeballs on this moment. You want to maximize the eyeballs. I wanted to know who was going to be who's going to be her first target to wrestle. Why don't we even create a match? Why don't we create her first match out of this moment so that we get people excited for a future Dynamite or future Collision? But she didn't set anything up. And then she was so vague in her coming back to the end of the show. Either people didn't care, which is what I hope that wasn't the case, or they just didn't know. Because you put Riho and Willow in the main event, and I love both of those women. I think Riho's
and a lot of people turned it off.
Yeah, Riho's is such a tremendous underdog babyface, but the people didn't come back. And so you missed Mercedes. And there will be some people who go, oh, but Mercedes did a promo with Riho that showed you. And I was like, well, that was already so late in the show. You're only showing that to the hardcores already, like unless you expect them to call their friends or whatever. So I think they could have done a lot of other things for the business aspect of taking advantage of this moment, because they doubled down on the surprise thing. Like you said, the CM Punk thing. And I think we said when it happened, like there's differences to this model between CM Punk and Mercedes. So we're not really Monday morning quarterbacking that. We pretty much said that we wished that they did it a different way. And I just wish that they actually created some business out of that moment for Mercedes. I think that was the one thing missing.
Yeah, we'll see what it means on Wednesday, We'll see what it means. I mean, also, they're trying to milk it too, right? Now you had the appearance, then you have another appearance, and then you have some sort of interaction. You're trying to build it week by week, and I understand that. But if it was done a different way, maybe it might have been done better. It's hard to tell.
What did you think about this tag team tournament that they're doing?
Yeah, do we have brackets?
There is a bracket.
This is the March Madness one, right?
Which it's unfortunate because, when you and maybe Tony Khan didn't even say this, maybe it was Dave kind of hyping this up, but you have this idea of March Madness. My brain went into, oh my gosh, we could do like a 16 team tournament and we can get all the way to the pay-per-view and just have these great tag team main events on all these TV shows. And when it turned out to what the bracket was, it was pretty poor, I thought. You get the Young Bucks You get FTR, you get Ricky Starks and Big Bill. Those are the top 3 teams. Where's Claudio and Mox? Didn't they beat FTR?
Where is Claudio? Yeah. Well, there's 2 wild cards, right?
So the one of the wild cards has already become a team in the tournament. The Infantry beat the House of Black on Collision, so they're actually in the tournament. Their first round matchup is FTR. They're taking a major L in that match. And then the second wild card is the Best Friends versus the Callis family, Don Callis family, which is, I think that is going to be on the Rampage hour of our 3-hour show on Wednesday, because there's no Friday Rampage show. They're putting Rampage
there's no Collision
into the last hour of Dynamite. So we got essentially a 3-hour Dynamite on Wednesday night.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a test to see if that could be sustained.
You know what, though? If you are going to do a test, I would not call it Rampage. I would just call it a 3-hour Dynamite, because they are calling 1 hour.
They have
of
to for
that
at.
I know
it's the same. Yeah, they have to call it Rampage. It's the same reason why Battle of the Belts is called Battle of the Belts, and it's like a 2-hour thing, and they do 2 blocks. When they would.
If you wanted to do a true
what
test,
show was it?
Yeah, you could you
just call it Dynamite and just do 3 hours.
Yeah, but like you said, there's reasons that you have to do it that way. I mean, unless they, you have the 2 hours of Dynamite to really try and get people to stick around for that 3rd hour of Rampage, and maybe the way to do it is to, I don't know who is AEW's top draw right now. If you said, this is the person we want to be on the show that is going to drive the maximum amount of viewers, who would that person even be?
That's currently available for them? That's like working? That's very telling, right? Because now I need to think about it. And in previous years, I would have said CM Punk, Kenny Omega.
It's not MJF. MJF is not working right now. I mean,
it would have to be Joe and Swerve?
Yeah, I was thinking Swerve.
Ospreay?
I was thinking, well, Ospreay not yet, but it sure feels like he's going to be there at some point. Okay, so let's say, let's do this as an experiment. Let's say that they had a groundbreaking angle or announcement to make. I guess the answer is they used Tony Khan in that moment, right? Because he's always the one that does that announcement. Like the Tony Khan special announcement may be one of the bigger draws in AEW, because what I was going to say,
special announcement is number 1. Yeah.
Because what I was going to say is if you announce something for that 3rd hour of Rampage and you want to see how much audience you can stick around, who do you have tie in? Like, you have somebody at the beginning of Dynamite and you do an angle and you say this angle will pay off, but you got to stick around for the 3rd hour of Rampage and then you will see the payoff. I guess Tony Khan would be the person to make that as a special announcement rather than the wrestlers.
Yeah. But that's bad. That's not good. Because I could tell you right now who the biggest draw in AEW and WWE is. I could tell you the top 3.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's a very different product. Like, for me, it's Danielson. I love watching those wacky Danielson matches. The wacky pairings. I'm into that. That's what I want to watch.
Yeah.
I didn't watch. I didn't get a chance to watch. I was in Vegas this week, so I didn't really watch any wrestling this weekend. But for me, that's a draw. Now, that's not the typical wrestling fan.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, listen, Okada and the Bucks for sure. For me. Moxley for me. I would say Moxley right now, but is he in the top picture? No, he's not. Who's in the top picture? You got Swerve, you got Hangman, and you got Joe.
Yeah, see, for me, it's like, how do you make this 3rd hour of Rampage feel special? Well, maybe you do maybe you do the whole first round of this tournament on this show. And, I know he needs it for the rest of the shows, but I was just trying to think of how do you get people to stick around for this 3rd hour? Maybe it's just that Dynamite is good and people are like, heck, I want to see a 3rd hour of this, and maybe they will. I don't imagine that they will. I imagine this will be a higher rated segment, a higher rated Rampage show, just by having the Dynamite lead in than they did on Friday, which was like 320,000 people or whatever it was.
Look, let me ask you this, okay? And we have a pay-per-view coming up this month. But as far as the world title goes, right?
No, you mean
You
is it
have
next month?
I'm sorry, next month. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
21st. Yeah, April 21st. When you're looking at that show and you obviously Joe's the world champion and obviously Swerve is in the mix. Do you think it would be beneficial if they pivoted? And I'm not suggesting, I'm just throwing this question and I want the audience to answer because I want to gauge this. Would it be beneficial to any level if Okada just came in there and just became the world champion and just held that freaking title for a while? Just he's so good. You can't beat him. Would that be better? And he holds on to that title for months. He just squashes everybody because he's Okada. And I'm going to throw a name. Swerve comes in and challenges him, or MJF returns, and somebody beats him. Would that solidify, the next champion as being, oh man, you beat Okada for the world title? That's a big deal. Or does it not matter if Okada has a world title or not?
I think it matters and he is one of the few that would make it matter, but it's to a hardcore audience, right? It's to us. It is not to the person who tunes in, once every 2 or 3 weeks. They probably weren't watching New Japan.
But who are they into? Those guys?
Probably MJF.
Probably MJF, and he's not there. I like that guy that tunes in every 2 to 3 weeks. Is he impressed by Swerve? Like, I'm so impressed. I really think Swerve should be the next guy. I think you have a very unique opportunity to do something a little different here and take one of your guys and make him the champion outside of the big names. Like Swerve is on his rise. He's not on the exit. Joe is exiting, and you look at the AEW World Champions that they've had. Joe, he's at the end of his career. Obviously, he's still one of the best, but he's at the end. Better than Chris Jericho at the end. Kenny Omega came in banged up. He's not that active.
He's at the end, I think.
Okay. So between Moxley, I mean, unfortunately, because that's the saddest thing to me. Because if you ask me 2017, 2018, 2019, who is the greatest wrestler currently and who's your favorite, it's Okada. It's obvious. I mean, Okada, obviously, but it's Kenny Omega. He was different and it worked, but the guy is so beat up from wrestling. But if you take all of those out, who has been the guy? MJF really is the only one. Then you have Moxley, already an established guy, and Hangman, the other one. Punk on his way out. End of the career. So it's interesting how they've done this. Swerve would be a guy that could carry it, but then what happens? You also have Jay White there. You also have Ospreay there. You have, unbelievable talent that should be in the mix with each other. Everybody should be in the mix with each other. Make me want us know, or make me want someone to lose. That is the key here. I want to know what's next. What's coming? And I don't know.
It's a great question. This is funny because Brian and Dave were talking about New Japan earlier this morning on Wrestling Observer Radio, and Dave was talking about how Yota Tsuji, should probably be a top person because when business is struggling, you kind of need to shoot that person who you feel may be the one into the spot sooner than later. When you are a successful company, you can actually take your time with that rise.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even thinking about this when he was saying it, but you just mentioning Swerve. Now, AEW is maybe from a gate or an attendance standpoint, they may be struggling. So maybe there would be reason, but you saying that Swerve is on his ascent and Samoa Joe is kind of leveling off a little bit, that tells me that Swerve should win this title, right? Because sooner than later, you need to start capitalizing on the folks that fans are investing in. They are investing in Swerve. They are investing in Will Ospreay at some point. Like maybe the numbers aren't really there for him yet, but they're investing in Swerve, much like they were investing in MJF, and he got the title. So I would say sooner than later, maybe the ideal is to give Swerve the world title, and then see what happens. And
I'm going to do a terrible comparison here. Okay, I'll do a terrible comparison here because I'm trying to come up with a name. Generally, when that works, right? That up and coming guy wins the world title for the first time. They have to be the prime focus of the company. They have to be the flagship. Swerve is not the flagship. He is not the prime focus. And it ends up not meaning much. That's my only fear here. Because you have a lot of moving parts now between Ospreay and Okada and what the Bucks are doing. He's not the prime focus. What would happen? 1998, Shawn Michaels in Austin. Yeah, Austin wins the main event and wins the title, but guess what happened? Hulk Hogan was wrestling in a huge match, and that was the attraction. That's what people wanted to see was Hogan to your core audience. That would have impacted the entire trajectory of Steve Austin. I'm not saying that Swerve is Steve Austin. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen. I'm saying you need to put so much more focus on that. This man is dangerous. This man could beat him, and he will be a major contender in this company. I feel like the focus kind of shifted a little bit with a lot of the moving parts. Between Mercedes being the focus, Okada being the focus, Ospreay being the focus. Where's your world title now?
Right. I hear you.
And again, I'm saying this because I absolutely love professional wrestling. I'm not saying this because I don't like AEW or I don't like WWE. It's pretty obvious where my wrestling likes are, and it generally leads to AEW and New Japan and that kind of style. But I'm also able to kind of recognize, listen, you need that WWE-isms a little bit in your product. You need that a little bit because it's entertainment.
So I think we both agree. And you know what? If Kazuchika Okada beats Eddie Kingston tomorrow night, which I think Dynamite tomorrow is actually a more loaded show than last week. So I'm really excited for tomorrow's show. Okay, so let's say Okada beats Eddie Kingston, and let's say Swerve beats Samoa Joe, and he's the world champion. I would love to see Okada and Samoa Joe for that, that continental belt or whatever it is that we believe Okada's going to win. Okay, last thing, and because you said another thing that I thought was really smart that made me think of something. Who is that person? Who is the person that people are tuning into? And the non-hardcores, probably MJF, maybe a little bit of some of these old guys like Edge who are coming in, but Adam Copeland. But maybe now that person becomes Mercedes. And so this goes back to what I was saying earlier, and the reason why I was a little bit disappointed in that. I wanted to see Mercedes create that thing, the next thing for us to look forward to. And maybe she does it on Dynamite tomorrow. But I guarantee you, unless she opens the show, and maybe she will, she's not going to have that same audience, that same television audience to then promote the next thing. But maybe it becomes Mercedes. And what have we been asking AEW for the longest time, which is some main event attractions on the women's side. And that's why I think Mercedes is really important, because now...
Yeah, listen, you got Mercedes. Mercedes is the one. The fact that Ronda Rousey walked in I mean, there's a backstage story here, right? There's more to this. But, you don't think that was an attempt to some extent to see if Ronda would be interested in kind of coming into the mix? I mean, that's a box office attraction. Forget about that last run and how people crapped all over her.
People would be if AEW fans would dislike Ronda. I think it's a weird thing.
But why?
Okay, you want to know why?
She's everything that they should like. Unorthodox wrestling style. She's an ass kicker. She's a legitimate fighter. If we're talking her political point of preference, I mean, listen. You know what? I'm able to separate all the things.
Andrew, you
I'm able
like
to
money.
separate the dopiness. I like money. I know, and that's the difference. I like money, and that is how I think. I'm like, you shut the F up. I don't care what your politics are. How much money can we make right now? Unless you're a
Well,
heinous human being and you're saying some stuff that's absolutely insane. I mean, she did say some insane stuff, but I just look at that as just being a dopey wrestler that's not
yeah.
in the know of things, and that's
All
fine.
all wrestlers have a megaphone now, and for
I know,
better
and
or in most
everybody
cases
has a
for worse.
megaphone.
Yeah.
Everybody has a megaphone, and you know what? If I was a dictator, I would remove everybody's megaphone. And you got to pay me the $9.99 a month to get your blue check mark and to be able to talk to people. Wait, that is what happened. That is what happened.
Exactly.
No, listen, I, but you know what I mean. You have opportunities, and we could go a little bit. I feel like things are flowing. If you want to go like 5 more minutes, Garrett, I can.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, we can keep going.
Because I think this is a really interesting conversation about the state of AEW and the state of professional wrestling. WWE is no longer professional wrestling. I know that they're saying wrestling again, and I know they're going back a little bit more. It is something very different. And I didn't grow up on this version of WWE. I grew up on professional wrestling. We're probably, Garrett, you and I are the last generation of fans that have grown up with pro wrestling without the WWE stuff that they do. I don't want AEW to turn into that because we saw what happened to TNA when they attempted that. But man, who is the guy I'm turning in for? Who is the guy? Who is the girl I'm tuning in to Collision for? Who are those people? Who is your top 5 where you tell me these are mega stars and you're a fool for not watching? I think what ends up happening in AEW is that there's a lot of unbelievable talent that is already established, and they've done everything that they could in wrestling. And guess what? They don't give a shit to be the world champion and to be the number 1 guy. There's a lot of those. And we saw that from the beginning.
Contract, baby.
You got a guaranteed contract. You know what you're making. And you know what? You're having fun. You've already done it all. You've wrestled everywhere. And look, somebody in the gym, you're wearing an AEW jacket. Of course. Why can't I? And guess what I'm wearing underneath here? I'm wearing a Hulk Hogan t-shirt. I just have no sleeves, so I put it on. And I haven't done push-ups for the last week. So I feel a little... don't body shame me, Desmond.
Come on, Desmond.
Andrew
only works for AEW some of the time. Not all
guys,
of the time.
I am one of the most unbiased people when it comes to professional wrestling because I don't give a shit about the acronym or the letters or the company. I just want to see really good wrestling. That's all I care about. And whether if that's a WWE product, great. If that's an AEW product, great. That's all I give a shit about.
Best
if it's
case
an indie
scenario,
show, great.
It's both, right? The best thing for the industry is that both companies are hot, which is really hard to do.
And the thing that's frustrating about AEW to me is that they have probably the best roster I've ever seen in any company. I've never seen a company to have this deep of a performance roster. Forget about having the Hulk Hogans and the Kevin Nashes and Scott Halls, right? All great names. The talent pool that this company has, and not just in ring, ability to talk, ability to capture an audience. I want to see all these guys and girls do great. Now with Mercedes there, it's going to elevate that division. There's no question about it. Whether or not it's at the level that you think it is, that's fine. But it will elevate it. As far as the men's roster goes, you have Okada, Will Ospreay, and everybody else. How are you? It's kind of disappointing, right? You see those ratings, you're like, how are you not doing 950,000? Forget about TV. How are you not putting 4,000 people in a building?
Yeah.
How? It's not, at some point you got to say, maybe it's not about the talent and what we're doing on TV. Maybe it's about everything else that we're doing to get us there. WWE's a machine. They're on their 8th or 9th sellout straight. That has not happened in a very long time. But the other part is when WWE is hot, guess what happens? And Dave says this all the time. Everybody else is doomed.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how it is. They capture that core audience and the eyeballs. And guess what? How many hours of wrestling are you going to watch? And if I have to choose, if I'm just if I'm a casual fan and I'm flipping through, or I know SmackDown is on, I know Raw's on, and I've watched 6, 6 hours already. Do I have another 2 in me? And for AEW, that's a detriment, obviously. But my bigger concern is, TV's TV, and AEW could flatline and still be over 600,000 viewers a week, right? That's a very big possibility. That's their core audience, and they will always do that. Remember TNA? We would always talk about how they will never drop below 300,000 because that was like their core audience. They always did the same number when they were like falling. I don't think that's the case for AEW. However, your house, what you're doing as far as attendance goes, is a key indicator if you are hot. And right now, they're not. And that's unfortunate because the wrestling is better than ever. Yeah. Now, can people hear, John, or is that only in my ear? And I'm going to respond to the ether. It's only in my ear. It's in the ether.
It's in our ears.
It's an hour.
Now I know what Mick Foley felt when Vince was in his ear.
Garrett, you and I were at that show. I know. Vince is he's yelling at me. You have to hear what he does during Observer Live, dude. He's just screaming at me like Vince. Pronouns, pal. He just keeps screaming pronouns, pal. He, she, they, them. No, different pronouns. We were at that show in Chicago.
All out 2021.
I have never been to a better show than that. That was the most fun show I've ever had. And you know why? My wife is not a huge wrestling fan whatsoever. She tolerates it. Okay? My wife tolerates it. It's been in part of her life for almost 20 years with me.
Yep.
You have to look beyond your personal preference. When she's engaged and she's watching this match, and you know what she got into? That cage match. With the Bucks. She was stunned by it. She was stunned by it. She said, I've never seen anything like this. This show felt like a rock concert. And that's very telling. And that's how I measure if something is hot or not. When somebody that is not necessarily your hardcore audience, your P1 audience, is committed to watching the show and is into watching the show, that's when you know things are shifting. We're not there right now with this company. And it's unfortunate because I absolutely love watching AEW.
Yep. All right. Last part of this show, since we are in the OT, the overtime portion of We're Live, pal. I just saw this story. This is kind of not really breaking news, but I know this came out today. Did you know that Bellator, which is now like the third of the MMA brands, the Professional Fighters League acquired Bellator, so they're technically the same company. They had been on Showtime previously. Do you know where they are now going to be airing their fights?
No, where?
Max.
Really?
Starting this Friday. They just signed a deal with Max. And this show upcoming on Friday is in Belfast. So that's where they are going. TNT Sports will also air some content, as will True TV, and Max will have the entire library of Bellator on the service. That is kind of interesting. And the reason I bring this up is because you have been on more than anybody that if AEW re-ups with Warner Brothers, that you believe that they will end up on Max as well for their pay-per-views.
Yeah. And quite possibly simulcasting, possibly Collision and Dynamite on there also. That was very interesting. A lot of people have asked me about what's the recent development. I guess I'll give you a little scoop at the end, right? I think this simulcasting is a very real discussion to have. I've heard it from multiple sides, but I will say there has been a recent development in getting this deal done.
Tony seems to think so, right? Some of the comments that he's made.
I think it's because of the same reasoning. I'm trying to protect people here. And it's not anybody on the AEW side. I wasn't told this by somebody that works in AEW. I was told somebody outside of it. Actually, strangely enough, someone that is not on the Warner side either. I do think there is a major development the last, I don't know, maybe a couple months, maybe a month, maybe 2 months. I don't know the time frame here, but I've never doubted that they weren't staying on Turner. I've never doubted that they're not going to Max. It's just a matter of getting that deal done. But everything now that we're seeing with Max streaming Bellator, like you said, which I did not know about, and getting the archive, which I did not know about, kind of amplifies the conversations that I've heard. It makes more sense now.
Shout out to Ryan Frederick, who writes the UFC recaps in the Wrestling Observer newsletter and who comes on with Dave and I post UFC shows. He was the one who told me about this information, and so then I looked it up.
Are you and Dave going to do like the Mike Tyson Jake Paul recap also? Do you know how excited I am for that? I looked at my wife and I said, I want to go to Arlington for that fight.
Yeah, no,
I've never seen a Tyson fight. Never seen it.
I mean, I don't know. We haven't discussed it, but I think it's a fascinating thing. The problem is this audience that pays for the subscription. It's mostly a pro wrestling audience. Even the MMA stuff is less popular than it has been in the past. So, if we do stuff, it's usually has to be about pro wrestling unless it's a big UFC show. I wonder what the crossover is with the audience who watches pro wrestling and the Mike Tyson, Jake Paul thing.
I don't know. For me, I'm so into it. Like, I want to see Tyson just knock his head off.
Yeah.
He's one of the greatest boxers of all time against one of the best, attraction fighters of all time, right? He would be an attraction boxer. One of
the best marketers of himself in a long time, I think, Jake Paul.
I got to tell you, Jake Paul is an unbelievable athlete, great boxer. Same with his brother, same with Logan. Great boxers, but the Fury fight, the Tommy Fury fight, was very telling to his actual professional ability. Not that he put up a fight for sure, but Tommy Fury is not a top of the line boxer.
No.
And I don't care. Mike Tyson's 57 years old, and this guy is doing all of the top of the line training and analytical boxing. Did you see what they were doing with how they were training him?
I only saw the little workout video that he put up.
So when he did the fight over the pandemic against Roy Jones, right? Yes. Roy Jones Jr. He was doing like muscle stimulation where they're strapping him to see like if there's any muscle fatigue and they're charging those muscles up. I mean, they were doing state-of-the-art endurance stuff with this guy. And you look at him, he's 57 years old. Fatigue could be a thing. He's gotten hit in the head a whole lot more than Jake Paul has in his life. That could play a part. But he's still Mike Tyson, and this guy is not wired like anybody else on this planet. So
I mean, he's probably going to
be by this.
He's probably going to be 30 pounds heavier as well, because Jake is if Jake was actually a competitive boxer versus the attraction fighter that he is, I'm guessing he would probably at best be a super middleweight, and that's like 168. And so Tyson is legitimately 225, 230 pounds. By the way, state of the art, Mike's got to be on some state of the art testosterone too, because that dude looks great.
He is.
For 57.
There's no USADA testing.
Yeah, I don't think so. That's probably partially why the fight's also in Texas. But he's going to have a lot of size on Jake. Jake's going to put on weight just because he's going to need to be bigger. I don't know if it's going to be good weight for him, but I think Jake's best scenario, his best strategy is to hope that he can stay away from Mike for like 3 or 4 rounds and hope that Mike gets tired, and then he can come in and land some shots, because Mike still hits harder than Jake could even imagine to hit. So that's going to be the intrigue. But yeah, well, if me and Dave don't do something, then maybe you and me have to do something. But yeah, we'll figure it out. But next week, come join us for the Dave Meltzer Super Chat Q&A. And we'll have Dave on for at least a half an hour, maybe more. And hopefully people come through. And if you've ever had a question in that memory chamber that you've always wanted to ask Dave on the air to get his immediate reaction to your question, this is the day to do it. Next Tuesday. All right. For Andrew, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.